With the Premier League season just around the corner, things were going all too well for Enzo Maresca's Chelsea, who have been struck with a huge blow as Levi Colwill is now set for a significant time on the sidelines after suffering an injury to his ACL. In today's video, we're going to discuss how big of a loss Levi Colwill is for Chelsea, whether the Blues need to dip into the transfer market to address the centre-back position, and who data suggests would be the ideal Colwill replacement. Now, to understand what Chelsea need in Levi Colwill's role, we have to understand what that role entails and how Levi Colwill is so perfect for that role under Enzo Maresca. Firstly, his ability to use sharp ball rolls and shifts on the ball to open his own passing angles and manipulate the ball in that first line. Secondly, his understanding of tempo control, that willingness to settle on the ball, put his foot on the ball, but also often make the decision to raise the tempo and split the lines himself. And thirdly, his ability to be a sweeper, but also go aggressive in a man-to-man pressing scheme as and when it is asked of him, using his physical traits to defend proactively. It is important to remember that Levi Colwill will return, and any recruitment that is done this summer or in the future has to be with him in mind, otherwise it could cause problems later down the line. Okay, starting with our in-house solutions for this Colwill situation, because a lot of people are talking about, we've already signed Giri, who is a left centre-back. And of course, we have players at the club that could do this role. But as we've just sort of spoke about with the Colwill's role and the importance of it, it's a lot more than just being this left-sided centre-back out of possession. Now, theoretically, yes, Giri can play as part of this sort of back four as a left centre-back. We take Colwill out, Giri slots in there, and then Tosin would likely be the one to slot in here. Because the main reason that Hato is not a direct replacement is, again, the reasons on the ball that we spoke about, where Colwill is more likely to play as that central centre-back, whereas Giri Hato, whether starting as a left centre-back or a left-back, is more likely on the ball to be playing in that sort of left centre-back area in a back three. Not only is that his best position in terms of being able to carry the ball forwards and impact the game in that way, but he's also very left-footed, so his passing angles are very sort of directed to one side of the pitch. He has very good angles from this left centre-back position because he can cut them across on his left foot whilst also playing those channel balls. But when he's in the middle of the pitch, his ability to sort of, that one-footedness would kind of lock Chelsea off a little bit too much from this right side of the pitch, which will probably see teams fairly often looking to lock Chelsea off down this side and force Hato to play it this way so that they could set traps. So that is something that Hato really isn't in his game. Yes, he's very good on the ball and he's very good at sort of beating that first line of pressure, but it is more so from this left centre-back position. Now, of course, Josh Acheampong, he's another one that is being mentioned as somebody who could benefit from this. I think he could benefit in terms of minutes purely because other players are going to be, like Tosin is going to be threaded into the sort of thrust into the limelight, and we're going to speak about that. So maybe he gets more minutes as that right-sided centre-back in sort of competition with Chalobah. But again, he's not the sort of player that's going to... But again, he's not the sort of player that's going to play as this central centre-back on the ball. Because, again, he can play and he is brilliant on the ball in terms of dictating and manipulating the ball, as we spoke about with Colwill, to find his own angles. But it's more so for carrying than it is for passing. Again, still a brilliant passer, but I think at such a young age, that controlling of tempo and things like that, I think he's much more effective in this sort of wide centre-back position. Of course, plays as a right-back as well, so he is perfectly in the same way Hato to be that sort of wide centre-back or full-back on the ball, but also off the ball in terms of in the back four. So that's where Tosin or Ribero comes in. And yes, the likes of Hato and Acheampong, you could even have both. Okay, Acheampong starting right back, Ribero, and then Hato in there, and then Kukurea, whatever he could invert or push forward. This, with Hato as the left centre-back, would work because effectively you've still got that central centre-back who has the qualities to play on both feet through the lines, control that tempo a little bit better, not at the same level as Colwill, but Ribero is the best in terms of fit that we've got for this at the club right now. However, big season ahead, Premier League, Champions League, hopefully deep runs in the domestic cups. You can't rely on Tosin for an entire season if Colwill's going to be out for the entire thing, which it looks like he will be. And even so, he's going to have to get back to his best and his full fitness. So you've then also got someone like Fofana, who, again, similar to the likes of, who did we say? Who we already spoke about. Acheampong Hato has his issues in the middle as that central centre-back, can easily be sort of shut off and forced to one side. Chalobah can do it on occasion, but again, not anywhere near as good as the likes of Tosin and Colwill. The next best option for me would be Badiashile once he returns. But again, I think maybe doesn't have that same control when it comes to manipulating his own angles. Brilliant passer of the ball, but maybe not the same level of control and tempo sort of realization as the likes of Colwill and Tosin. But I do like the idea of Badiashile being an important part of the team this year with Colwill out, whether that be as that left-sided centre-back in there with, say, for example, Tosin there, or as that central centre-back with someone like Hato or elsewhere. So it's definitely something that I could see happening in terms of using Badiashile. The last option in-house is, of course, Renato Vega, who would be perfect for this. And again, can play as both, but again, he's perfect for that sort of role where he's able to become that progressor from the back and dictate on the ball. He's got the frame, he's got the physicality, he's good enough in the duel, and he is a good enough sweeper in that sense to be able to mop up behind these players. But he's also a little bit aggressive, a little bit sort of wants to be involved in those duels. So these players would have to have that recovery speed, which is something Chelsea do have now. So that's a good sign. Now, Vega makes a lot of sense, but of course, bridges have been burned, supposedly. So it's hard to know exactly where things lie. If Vega was to stay and you was able to get Badiashile and you're confident in Badiashile coming back to fitness, then I think that you've got enough options to make it work because you've got Vega, Badiashile, and Tosin who can all play as that central centre-back when needed. However, there's, of course, better options for this role, and it all depends on if the optics are there to be exploited with Cole's injury, because, of course, you have to remember he is coming back. He's not gone forever. Just before we move on from this section as well, Anselmino is another one. Could get chances in if he stays around, but again, I just think he's probably going to get a loan out. He's probably not going to be thrust straight into the limelight. Really suits this role in terms of, again, manipulating tempo and manipulating angles, should I say, to play through the lines. But, and he is very two-footed as well in that sense. But, yeah, I'm just not 100% sure that he's going to be thrust into the limelight. Okay, so the first one when it comes to a Levi Colwill possible replacement is, of course, Marc Giri. He's already been linked before. What I like about the Giri idea is that he can become that Levi Colwill sort of player, and we're going to touch on that with a few sort of qualities that he has in terms of that passing ability that he'll bring in that backline, which Enzo Maresca has supposedly said already that he likes back in the past. I think it came out back closer to January that he quite likes Giri for that reason in terms of on the ball. But, and of course, this probably wouldn't be that you wouldn't play him with Hato because the height there would just be ridiculous. But there's different ways that you can sort of make this work. Let's say with Badiashile, he could be that right centre back. If he was to be with Chalobah, then Giri would start as the left centre back. Chalobah would start as a right centre back, and it would probably be this way round, where it sort of becomes something like this. Still very small at the back, so you probably wouldn't want to do it like this. But this is just an example of how you can move things around with Marc Giri, and the fact that he can play as both a left centre-back and a right centre-back, very two-footed with his passing, and very able to sort of move the ball between the lines. I think the big thing for Giri is that it's obviously a World Cup year, so whilst Colwill is out, he would get a lot of minutes in rotation with someone like Adarabioyo. Giri would become that sort of main central centre-back. Him and Adarabioyo would probably keep the same role. I don't know why I'm saying Adarabioyo instead of Tosin. They'd keep the same role as he did last season, and yeah, Giri would become that for this season. The problem then becomes when Colwill comes back, are they an optimal partnership? For me, it can work in like two build-ups where Colwill's left centre-back, Giri's right centre-back, and that's sort of what you've got. But you'd need to have someone like a Chempong or even Hato, but like somebody to give more physicality. Yes, there's a lack of height, but Giri is very good at reading the ball in terms of sort of when to go for it and when not to. I think he's quite good in that sense and being a proactive defender. So there is reasons and at the right price that Giri makes a lot of sense. However, it does come down to, would it make sense for him? Not just Chelsea, would it make sense for him? Because does he think that when Colwill comes back and if Fofana can stay fit, does Giri drop down the pecking order and become that third choice? Again, a brilliant guy to have as a third choice if you're Chelsea because he can play both sides. He can play as a central centre-back. He can play as a wide centre-back, as you've seen this season with Likar as the central centre-back and Giri actually playing as that left centre-back. So there's definitely loads of options, but is that what he wants for his career? And of course, the intangibles that come along with Giri are brilliant. I think he's a brilliant leader. I think he's got a very firm head on his shoulders. And I think that that's a big thing that could help the group and sort of gel into the group in terms of character. So yes, that would work brilliantly, but is it worth it for Giri is the question. Now, as I keep harping on about, the ability to manipulate the ball in these deeper areas is so key when you're trying to progress play for Chelsea, because you're looking to open up those passing gates and make the most of it. Now, Mark Gurhey, for me, is brilliant at this. He's very press resistant. And from these areas, he is able to find those gaps, open them up himself with a quick shift of the ball, and then find the pass through the lines. Now, on this occasion, you can see as one of the players here is taking away, I don't know who that is for Crystal Palace, but he's taking one of the players away. What he's actually doing is he's opening up this passing gate slightly more between these two players, which allows Gurhey to thread that pass through the lines as such. And it's that ability to shift the ball himself, find the angle, open, and again, access that pass that makes him a very key progressor, but also a very good one in a possession-heavy team like Chelsea, where he would have to take up those Levi Colwill roles. Now, again, he's being pressed in this scenario, but his first touch, he sort of slows himself down to receive the ball before then taking a clever first touch forward. As you can see, there is a big amount of space open for him to sort of take that touch into. Now, if we go on one more, you can see he beats his man. He's away in this area. That is a terrible overall. And he is then causing this player to jump. I'm still getting the hand of the tactics board, you can tell. He causes this player to jump out, which then means that there's going to be a spare man in the middle, and he can then progress from there. So again, it's those qualities that open up the pitch and make the picture change for a possession-based team that's trying to break down lower blocks, but also to break down higher pressing structures. And he gives you that versatility, and it's something Levi Colwill does very well as well. So this is something Mark Gurhey can bring to Chelsea, and why I think he could be a good addition. Next up, we've got Lille's Alexandre Ribero. Again, brilliant in terms of that ability to progress play and sort of split the lines. He would be able to play as that central centre-back. He has that ball manipulation, which again, we're going to touch on in a second, but he has that. He's also a young player. He could fit, and I think he's got that two-footed nature where, because even though he's a left-footed left centre-back, he could also play as that right centre-back, allowing him to play alongside Levi when he does come back. So it isn't something that would be the end of the world in terms of blocking a pathway. Again, in the data, he shows up really closely to Levi in a lot of areas, in terms of being a sweeper, in terms of being a proactive defender, in terms of his security on the ball, but then also his ability to pick those passes between the lines, which is so important, missing out that pivot and being able to find these players here, but also being able to pick out those long passes in behind when it comes to picking out these wingers, for example. That is a terrible arrow, but you get the idea. So that's key with Ribero, and I think he's brilliant for that. Again, very good in his duels, very secure, and he would be a brilliant option. It would come down to price point, but it would make sense. The only thing would be, again, do you see him being the perfect partner for Levi in the future? Because I think if you're not going for somebody who can drop down to the bench and become like we said with Gurhey, if he was willing to, then I do think you're looking for somebody that is maybe the perfect partner for Levi when he does return, but can also play the Levi role right now, which is something that Ribero could do. Now let's have a look at Ribero, and like I said, it's just this ability to sort of open up multiple angles. He's opened up his body as if he's going to play the pass in here. Again, he's maybe got a passing option into this pivot player in here, or he could go, again, he can come on the outside and look, yes, this player's marking here, so he can't really play that ball into here. But he is looking to sort of access this side of the pitch, essentially. However, one touch later, he's now spun away. These players are now reacting against their momentum, which is, again, it's sort of opening up this passing gate that we spoke about earlier with Mark Gurhey, that this gate is now getting slightly bigger. This player is going against his momentum, and it can allow for those progressive passes to be played, which is something that Ribero can do, again, then being able to split that line. Again, we look here. He's just sort of came from this area, just a little bit behind where he is now, so around here, and he's twisted back inside, again, to look to open up it. All he had on at that point from here was a channel ball. But from there, he's able to manipulate his own body with tight dribbling qualities, which for a centre-back is, of course, very, very, well, key if you have it in that sense. And he's then able to split the lines or play a diagonal pass to sort of open up the pitch and sort of switch the play. Here's another example of that as well. Just again being able to play between those lines and really forcing that ball through, which is something that Ribero is good at. I think his progressive passing numbers are actually better than the likes of Colwill, Giri, the ones that we're speaking about today. So in terms of the actual progressive nature, Ribero is definitely one of the most impressive really in this feature. Even in Europe, I'd say, in terms of doing that. So his ability to manipulate those angles is brilliant. And that is one reason why he could be the perfect player to come in to replace Levi Colwill for the time being. Which leads me on to maybe my favourite option of the lot, purely because of the optics that we've been speaking about in terms of he can be a replacement for Levi now, and he can offer even some different things, but some very similar things in terms of how he ranks on the data and how he plots on the data. But also, he could then be the perfect partner for Levi going forwards in the same mould of, say, a Wesley Fofana in terms of an aggressor, but even better on the ball. Now, Loic Bardet from Sevilla, he's been getting attention throughout Europe currently. I think Leverkusen is the latest team to be linked, but he can play as that central centre-back, and we've seen that at Sevilla this season. Again, as we keep touching on that ability to pick out players in the pockets, pick out the wingers with long passes, but also just dictate the tempo and play those easier circuit passes and not get locked off to one side, because his ball manipulation and ability to not only find his wide centre backs, but even find those short passes into the pivot to sort of allow for those third man combinations. I think Loic Bardet is so composed on the ball and secure that he offers that very, very nicely. Now, the reason I like this one the most, like I said, is probably the optics of how it can work in the future. Now, let's say Levi Colwill returns, Loic Bardet comes out. Now, this was with Joel Hato playing as the left centre-back, and of course we had Cucurella inverting. Let's say that instead Colwill was playing as that left centre-back, Cucurella was playing as the left-back, and then Loic Bardet was as the right centre-back. He would now slot in here, and you could have both of them in that back line with Cucurella or Hato as that left centre-back. And then you would have your inverted fullback, or you would have the overlapping fullback with Palmer playing on the right, which is something we spoke about in previous videos, so go check those out, because there's plenty of tactics in terms of what we're talking about at this end of the pitch. But of course, in today's video, we are more so covering this end of the pitch and how it affects with Colwill being out. So this is a reason I quite like the idea of Loic Bardet, because I think that he was already linked with him before the Colwill injury, and he will fit next to Colwill. And he has very Fofana-esque traits in terms of his dueling ability and that aggression, and the fact that he can be that aggressor to Levi's sweeper, but he can also do the opposite, which I love. So, and I think that this sort of balance between the two could work in the future, and the price doesn't seem too bad for Bardet either. I think it's 30 million euros, so it's not too bad for somebody that doesn't block ridiculous amount of pathways. Now, yes, the big question is, of course, we know Enzo Maresca loves Levi. We know Enzo Maresca loves Wesley Fofana, as do I. But it's come to the point where you don't truly know how much you can trust him because of his injury status. Now, again, if Fofana gets to his absolute best, the likelihood is that would still be a partnership. So maybe Bardet, in that sense, he'd be fighting for his spot. And that could maybe lead to someone like Chalobah being sold, or even Tosin. But again, he's seen as a big leader. So, and Acheampong is probably the one that you're most cautious about in terms of blocking his pathway. So I understand that side of things, and that's where the squad planning has to be aligned with what you want for the future. Do you want to give Fofana another year to see if he can stay fit? And if not, would you be looking to move him on next year to open up that pathway for Josh? That's where I'm currently at, and that's why I think Loic Bardet could be the option for Chelsea in the market, if they are to go into the market and try to bring in a central defender this summer. And lastly, with Loic Bardet, again, much of the same. These ones are just very much just sort of long-range passes, these pictures that are coming from. He has that ability to sort of stand on the ball as well. He's very composed. He doesn't mind if he's getting pressed from even multiple angles, but he's very composed in that sense. He's willing to he can play that ball through here, even though there's multiple players. You know, as you can see, you've got two players here that could cut that out. He's confident, and he's also good at executing those passes. Of course, that's the easy pass, but he's very confident in his long-range passing, but also his ability to split the lines. So that's two sort of passing tools that he has to his game that, again, makes him very, very key when it comes to breaking those lines down, and why he could fit as that Colwill replacement. But also, as we said earlier, he could well be that partner to Levi when all things are considered in a two-man build, because you can imagine here he's sort of playing as that right-sided centre-back, and then you could have Colwill sort of in that left-side centre-back. If you had a two-man build, you'd have two players that can break the lines really effectively, and you don't lose the quality in terms of his aggression and those dueling qualities, because as we said earlier, with Ribero, he still has those. Now, of course, Enzo Maresca could tweak his tactics in order to get a different player on the ball in those central centre-back areas, but we'll leave that for another video.